in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you.
Classic liberals thinking they can eat their cake and have it too. Because it is a false choice. Because climate change is people's lives are being destroyed. Like, we are directly contributing to the destruction of the environment with every car that drives, every plane that flies, every plant that's just pumping out smoke. Like, and saying things like we've been, we're like, American green energy is not growing at a rate where when you say things like we're the highest we've ever had, it's like some kind of remarkable thing. We, especially when the Biden administration began, they shot down the green energy bill that AOC and, other members of Congress were trying to pass, which would have actually helped introduce real changes. And then they brought in the Inflation Reduction Act as a way of preserving, keeping their oil lobby donors happy, right? By not again, because there are moneyed interests in preventing this change, and the Democrats will attempt to maneuver that, and then they'll claim things, right? It's not a false choice. It's a good way of appealing to hyper uneducated Americans, but it's your rainwater, your groundwater, is going to become more polluted the same way. It's not going to, it's still, you're fracking, you're what do you want me to say? They're doing more they're ramping up the stuff that is doing pollution. And if you do more green energy, that's such a weird way of looking at the problem. There's a severe lack in understanding of logic, basic logic, to assume things like that. And I think, again, showing that, the reason that I think one of the reasons that you see a nationalist turn in the Democratic Party is because the economy is getting worse, and that's why you see more government intervention, and that's why you see more economic focus as well on the liberal side. And that's why they're talking about things why we need to keep these jobs and bring in these new jobs, right? Even though just a few years ago, right, climate change was what the real topic was, right when they were trying to, right when Trump was going to leave office. They needed to manufacture a new narrative that would successfully get Americans on board, and what greater way to do that than one of the things that we all agree is a problem, that only a few people don't agree, that really separated Trump from the majority of Americans, and they were able to successfully do and ride in on that, but none of those, nothing came of that whatsoever, at all. And to think that you can just keep on drilling, the problem doesn't continue to get worse when you do that. The goal isn't more green energy. The goal is a green transition, because our traditional ways of making energy through fossil fuels is polluting the environment and destroying the planet. It's a very liberal answer for them to be like, we can do both at the same time, and I'm not surprised. It's just very peak liberalism, right? It's just typical lib shit. At it again. I guess we'll continue. Don't want to waste up everybody's time.
Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris herself does.
Yeah, this is just like weak politics at this point from good old couch screwer here. Like, my dude, it's literally on her policy. Like, you know, if Governor Walz was like actually, I mean, he might bring this up, but if he was actually a master debater, you know, yes, pun intended, he would make this proper pivot and be like, my dude, like, we have, you know, these things on the platform. Like, what greater, you know, indication that they're actually doing that transition do you need? And I think JD Vance is relying on the strategy of just like constantly lie, and like your Republican voters will vote for you anyways. You just say stuff they want to hear, and they'll agree to that, even though it's objectively not true. It's what he just said is, again, objectively not true in every way. It's like Trump style lying, but like without any of the charisma and all of the and this time it has all of the JD Vance, and not a single person on this planet wants that. None of us, from the fascists to the communists, like none of us. Everyone's like, go away, and yet here he is, right? So I don't know. I guess it's fitting, but still, let's continue.
Doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States of America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make
the United States of America exported those jobs to China. The United States of American government and the corporations intentionally exported those jobs to China because they could they could pay their laborers less, and they could sell goods cheaper and therefore more often to consumers. That's why they did it. So like, again, like, you're just putting people and that was our own consequences of our own actions. Just lies and nonsense, all lies, all nonsense, especially from frickin' JD Vance. Like, screw him, all of this. This is dumb. We deserve better.
Make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years.
Senator.
Natural gas, we got.
I don't, you know, like, what he's like, yeah, like, let's just see how much lying he's about to do right now, I guess, because that's not, like, why he is not. It's like he's seeing how much of a bullshit lie he can make. Like, I wonder why he didn't say we didn't build one in 30 years. Like, my dude, we've been building God knows how many. I mean, like, let me here. Let me yeah, I mean, I just Googled it. At first, I started asking, like, questions and blah, blah. So then I just said, like, you know, new United States power plant, like, you know, whatever. And then, like, there's, like, two, at least, like, right off the bat. There's one that was made after 2016, and there's, like, another one or something like that. Excuse me. I'm not going to pull it up because you can look it up if you want. But, like, again, you can just literally pull up your phone, look this up. If, like, any person, just like with the brain, just does it and see that he's lying. And it's like, why would you ever vote for him if you could just watch him lie in real time? And he just did. Again, like, let's see what else he's about to say.
Got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse by the climate.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil. But the folks know, and like I said again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our number one export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. and thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take the oil company executives to Mar-a-Lago, say, give me money for my campaign, and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that, and an all-above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.
Did they? I don't even think they said, like, even the anchors said, like, it's human. Like, they understand emissions, but, like, they didn't even say it's, like, human-made. They won't even... I am so disappointed in Gen X and in the boomers, man. I'm so disappointed in, like, these supposed adults. I'm so sick. I'm so sick of American politicians and mainstream media. Yeah, and like they have that little thing where they'll say it, you know, and then they'll move on, but they won't actually say what needs to be said. And yeah, this is so disappointing in every way.
U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top issues for American voters. Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to...
I'm sorry to stop so much, but I just have to say, the only reason it's a top issue for American voters is because mainstream media made it out to be so. Like, there's no, like, it's people coming to America. Like, that's how, like, all of the white people are here for that reason. You think they showed up with, like, papers and they wait in line to, like, make sure they got their social security? Shut the fuck up. They were illegal immigrants too, quote unquote. And it's just like when brown Latin Americans do it, it's not okay. Even though, again... And, like, this is, you know, you'd think that this would make the racist Americans shut up, but it wouldn't. Like, y'all fucking love Chipotle and Taco Bell. There's, like, so many more Latin Americans in America now that there's, like, Hispanic food all over the place now, which is fucking fantastic. And it's, like, not just brand corporation nonsense. Like, it's owned and run by, like, people who make Hispanic food, like, actually. And it's, like, from the earth and, like, real food. You think all that type, and the music, they'll call it how insanely beautiful with, you know, just, I mean, all women are beautiful, but it's like when you're stuck in America and you're like stuck in this, you know, having people that aren't American in American, like our version of America, come to America, it's very like, oh, what a breath of fresh air, you know? So I'm on board with it. And you'd think Americans would be too, but, part of the reason that they're not is because there's the whole immigrants are scary, they're taking our jobs thing, to convince conservatives, because what's actually happening is that employers can pay immigrants less because they'll do more, and more often than not better, work for less. And that's like been a tale as old as time. You can like look up a video of Milton Freeman talking about it if you want. And so the real issue is that capitalism cannot guarantee full employment because it's not profitable to do so. So why would it do it? And then that's when you get conservatives to say things like, that's when the government's supposed to step in, and like they'll say nonsense, but it's like, my guys, you don't advocate for strong government. You advocate for like blowing up Palestinians and like making sure no one can go to college for free. Like, this is, shut up. It's unbelievable how much I have to just like paint and like try to explain and say. Immigrants, when they come here, they're just looking for a new life. A lot of the places that they are coming from, especially in Latin America, are from areas that the United States like intentionally screwed up. And this idea that like we can't have them in because, you know, whatever reason, like that's nonsense. And the real issue that that's the case is because the economic system that we live in, which again, way too much Red Scare and anti-communism in this country for people to even entertain. Americans will die from the cancer food they eat and without health care before they even consider communism might be correct. and that type of like self-loathing death cult culture is what lends me to be so dismissive about, like, you know, people who don't use critical thinking, like thinking that something, quote unquote, thinking that something's bad or wrong. It's like, you're not trying, so why should we listen to you? Try harder, and then maybe people will. But Americans have been, like, you know, intentionally made ignorant to a lethal level here. I'm still in disbelief how, like, where things have turned to. Things are just so screwed in every way. Like, I'm wondering, like, if the mainstream media didn't say a thing about the border, like, they just said, like, they didn't say a thing, like, would people even care? But since, you know, they ask American voters what's, like, you know, but they don't talk about or think about, like, what they should care about, or we're the media and we're like, there's no, Americans are very, very, very dumb, and I don't think they realize that. I don't think they realize how genuinely infantile that they are, and we need to start saying that and deal with that and talk about these things head on, because it's true, and I'm tired of having, like, immigrants, for example, having to pay the price because racist Americans or, like, just straight up dumb Americans don't want to have to, like, change, you know, tough shit. Eat my dick. Like, tough shit. Like, my upbringing was school shooting drills, and, like, my Saturday morning cartoons were mass shooting aftermath. Like, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Like, no one, goddamn. I love that meme that it's like, when you tell Gen Xers and boomers they're the generation of weak people, and they give, like, that pouty face, it's like, my dudes, like, what do you want, you know? And to any person, if you're a millennial or you're Gen Z like me, or I'm, like, kind of in between, but I identify as Gen Z, whatever. And now Gen Alpha, like, we need to stick together. We're already very, very unified, but we can't let these goddamn goobers, like, you know, destroy our future even more, because this is insane. Imagine blaming immigrants for the problems in America. Imagine looking at Latin Americans and saying, like, yeah, dude, you're the problem. Like, you have to genuinely be brain dead to think that. It's just the power of propaganda, I guess. Let's continue as I pretend not to be depressed from how terrible things are in America.
Carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history, and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies.
Kamala Harris wasn't president at the time. She was vice president, and she's actively campaigning for a border wall bill now. JD Vance's advisors are literally telling him, like, just say stuff, because no one's going to fact check what you say anyways, and they're going to, like, just believe whatever you want, whatever you say. Just like, say whatever you want, I guess. And that's unironically his strategy here. And a small other thing I wanted to add is, like, I don't know. I got to continue watching, but, like, so far they're like JD Vance, like, how will you survive how will you solve the West Asian, again, these are the vice presidential candidates. Like, it may seem like they're being unfair to JD, but it's more like the Americans are too inept. Like, these newscasters may be portraying like they're asking the real question, right? But they were handed a list from, like, their staff, and, like, they made sure they looked really nice that day, but they don't fucking know a goddamn thing about any of these regions or conflicts. They don't know anything about resource management. They're mindless anchors and fat talking heads for the state. But they put on all this expense. They got this high paid salary, this expensive setup, like this nice lights and all the makeup, and, you know, like, news anchors are like this, like, they're like a tier of celebrity that you're, like, not allowed to touch. Like, you'll go into, like, cities, and there'll be, like, that little cove in, like, the media building, and that's at, like, the street level where they, like, film, you know, like, their coverage or whatever, and there's, like, people on the street that are waving, and they're, like, not allowed to go in and stuff. Like, it's some, like, they're like these holy beings that you can't. No, man, they're idiots. They're fucking idiots. And they portray themselves as journalists because they rose up through the ranks and got there, but they're Biden administration, like, don't come, again, not going to be brought up by JD Vance because there's no real, integrity to conservatism in this country or to anything in general. Yeah, just more nonsense, more lies, more basic fact checking. Like, the mainstream media is so desperate to portray themselves like they're the moderators, I guess it's like just as much a big time for them, especially as like everyone understands the media is a bunch of garbage and lies when presidential election season comes up. And so they're, turning up the gears. But material conditions are objectively worsening, and it's very, very obvious that they're working with less and less. They're using less and less resources. They have, less and less setup. They're working with less to do more constantly, more and more every day, and it's only pushing further and further. In my opinion, when they first announced Tim Walz for the campaign, I thought that was showing that there might be a social democratic turn within the United States, which would ultimately be bad because we would be reaping imperial benefits from the peripheries that we invade and destroy, and then creating social safety nets here with said reaped fruits. However, American education is too weak for like even that type of complex, nuanced thinking to show up. Even if social democracy is objectively still the wrong answer, it's the left wing of fascism, just objectively. And so that's how we end up with liberalism, because there is no, Kamala Harris says like she is explicitly not a Marxist. She passes price control like stuff for rent, I think it was, or no, groceries. And everyone's like, commie. It's like, my dude, it's like, she's a Republican politician, just objectively, And so that's shows like you can't do anything remotely left in this country without being accused of being like a tanky. So, that's probably why we didn't actually see the social democratic reforms that we thought we were going to see from Tim Walz, who's an extremely progressive politician. I would compare his politics with Bernie Sanders. That's how progressive Tim Walz is. I would characterize him as a centrist. That's where I would put both of those people. So yeah, I like that's, liberal is not left, just for starters. And centrism fundamentally seeks to preserve the status quo. Like, I don't know if maybe Bernie Sanders supports socialism. Maybe he doesn't anymore. I don't even know if he does, man. He's a social democrat. Who cares? But Tim Walz doesn't. Tim Walz is slightly more conservative, but they're very, very similar. And so when he showed up on the ticket, it's like, oh, wow, are they actually going to take like a real social? Nope. They're just becoming more conservative. And so because the United States is not taking a social democratic turn, which is kind of like, it's like a good move, but it's still a blitz. It's still like a Hail Mary, it's still a good move, but it's still like a Hail Mary, right? Because things are getting worse, but they need like something to, to keep on going. But the thing is that the United States doesn't have, that type of sustainability and resources right now. And I think you could actually argue that we went through a mini social democracy chapter during FDR's time and all of the programs that we had back then, which again helped create the GI Bill, which is how all those people went to college, and how white flight in suburbia also showed up, unfortunately. So all of that prosperity happened because of social democracy. And so I was under the original impression, it's like, okay, well, what's the bourgeoisie's plan? Like, are they gonna do a social democracy turn? And it's like no, they won't even try that, which I think is pretty. It's like Israel behavior, man. You guys are they're not dotting their I's and crossing their T's, my guys. You're not doing the work you got to do. You got to show your work, and everybody's kind of getting past the major issues right here, and they think they can just like not deal with the fact that their lives are getting worse. Lenin once said all societies are 3 meals away from chaos, and I think he was a very, very smart man, and I think that was a very, very true thing he said, because it's very, very true. Just having like people, and that's so funny, is because that's still an issue. That's such like a selling point for me too in this country. That's such an issue here, is that like you have to find out what you're going to eat for dinner every single night, and you have to figure out every single day. Like there's no, and so that could easily, implode. I mean, if toilet paper is going to go missing for a couple months, And that's like just like the first COVID. And then like we couldn't remember during COVID, like we couldn't keep the restrictions. Like they had to let them go because the economy was crashing. They had to ignore a pandemic and just cross their fingers and hope that more people wouldn't die. As Americans are like, yeah, well, it's not that bad, even though there's, it's still ongoing and over 1,100,000 Americans died from it. Yeah, that's nothing, right, guys? I mean, I guess the people who survived, but good luck with those long COVID symptoms. Good luck with that. Yeah, all of this is because we don't take our issues seriously. We're not dealing with our problems. This country's not taking the proper steps it needs to, not towards social democracy, but towards real progressive and cooperative change. And that's not happening. So things are going to continue to get worse. And J.D. Vance is going to keep saying lies, and it's going to annoy me, and it's going to go on for 8 minutes, and we're never going to finish the video. So let's change that.
94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten
No. Fentanyl is overwhelmingly coming through traditional ports of entry. Say it with me, everybody. Fentanyl is coming through traditional ports of entry. Say it with me again, everybody. Fentanyl is coming through traditional ports of entry. It's not coming through the border. It's not coming through fucking Canada. It's white Americans in like docks and cities in airplanes and airports and shit doing the smuggling. Stop blaming brown people because their countries are destroyed because you went there and destroyed things. Like, stop. And then this whole, like, I had a mother with opioid. I mean, yeah, dude, that sucks, but that's because of the pharmaceutical industries. Why were they so hell-bent on making, like, here's heroin as, like, pain medication. And, like, no, dude, I swear, it's totally okay. You won't get addicted. You'll be fine, I promise. And then, like, this massive epidemic happens, and then fentanyl, which, again, is directly because it's such a powerful, dangerous fucking substance, and it's so cheap, and it's so bang for your buck. You can get so fucking annihilated off just like a little bit of it, even if it is ow, my eyes are so itchy right now for no reason. Even if it is not like super cheap. It's cheap, but not super cheap. Yeah, because I know so much about fentanyl. But my point, it's way too accessible and widespread for it to be truly that expensive. But it is, it's not like, piss where you can just like. Anyways, I'm rambling again. It's the problem with the pharmaceutical industries. They did that. They caused that crisis. They're the ones who sponsor and build rehab centers that don't work with methods that we all know don't work. As we all had people in our lives, we all have people in our lives that are addicts. All of us do. They're so plentiful, and we don't deal with it at all in this country on top of everything else, that we know that when they go to those places, it fucks them over, and it doesn't help them, and it makes them believe in God, and it's all just like creepy, weird nonsense, and it doesn't work for people. And that's intentional, because the pharmaceutical industries and other evil actors pay for these entities to exist so that they can keep the opioid crisis going, because it's profitable. Drug addicts are a profitable and reliable consumer group. You can sell them stuff and they will constantly come back, right? It's extremely profitable. So it's another thing I want to mention is that the federal government does seizes, right? They'll do drug operations and they'll do seizes, and they'll take in these resources, and these resources will have value, and they will steal. It's effectively a type of exploitation where they steal lumpen proletariat funds, and you can say that drug dealers are like, it's not legitimate money. Like I don't agree with you, but I understand why you'd say that. And like, let's say that's true, right? It's still tender. It's still legal tender. And then there's also the drugs, right? And so both of these things have monetary value, and the police can then absorb that, take these resources, whether it's the money they find, and then they can throw that in the apartment. They even slice a little piece off for themselves, right? Because they're the good guys, right? The drug dealers collect all the money for them to take. No totally hypocritical interactions there whatsoever. And that's, busts by themselves or whatever. But if you allow like the DEA, for example, to just like do busts all over the country with like a fentanyl, epidemic going on or whatever, that just gives them permission to do whatever the hell they want and to like take away resources from people that are just trying to get by, and create this kind of enemy for them to point their fingers at, even though the drug war is entirely United States government manufactured and a racist campaign against different communities. So yeah, not that JD Vance has like the intelligence to understand anything I'm saying, if he heard what I was saying, but this is that's the problem, not immigrants, and it's disgusting. I can't believe he's wearing pink, man. I'm a big pink stan over here. Your friend Jake Jog, the one and only. I'm a big fan of pink, man, and I'm not happy that he's wearing not just any pink, but it's our holy hot pink. It's a solid, nice, juicy magenta hot pink looking tie, and it's even got that subtle little scratch design to it. And who's wearing it? JD fucking Vance. This toad. This weird. He's like, JD Vance is America's Lara Strong. He's just like not disabled or whatever. Like he's literally like Lara Strong from House of the Dragons for America. Like that's what JD. He's got a weird like fucking the couch fetish, right? Whereas and he's like in the inner circle and he's all like creepy and weird. At least you kind of feel bad for Lara Strong on the show in like season 2. But JD Vance, it's the same thing. It's like the guy who what's the name of the guy who kills the elven leader in Rohan in Lord of the Rings? I forgot, or is it Ronin or something like that? And it's like this worm tongue, worm tail. I think that's Harry Potter, maybe. It's something else. It's like that guy who like stabs him in the back. He's like evil or something. I don't know. It's like that. He's like this creepy ghoul person. And so I don't think he'd genuinely care or know anything of what I'm saying, but everything I'm saying is like way more relevant to the problem than like blaming immigrants, for example. And he'll get away with this. No one's going to stop this kind of stuff because it's a part of the rhetoric, even though it's objectively racist. Acting like there's a border problem at all, we would be able to just allow people to come here and exist like without much issue if we had a country that was focused on taking care of everyone. But since we can only build workplaces and businesses that can only hire a flat amount of people, because if they hire more people than they need, then they will lose money and it's financially unsustainable. And that is not how this economic system works. So it is against capitalist interests. It is against capitalism's interest to have full employment. It is within their interest to have homeless people, to have unemployed people, to have a complete labor reserve supply of people that they can tap into when they want cheap labor to do whatever the hell they want for them. And that's all way more important to this than like blaming immigrants. It's disgusting. It's disgusting in every way.
Clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations. And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation, right?
I'm sorry. I can't. Like, this is so unbelievably screwed up and racist, this shit that he's saying right now, but it's so normalized in American, like, perception in public that he's going to get away with it, even though it's this is insane. He's not saying Haitians are eating cats and dogs, but it's still insane. I don't know what he's about to say about the family separation stuff, but this is wild, man. It's insane that, like, they can just do this stuff and get away with it, excuse me. And that goes for both sides, because Kamala Harris and Tim Walz did nonsense too, but Republicans have just like made a lifestyle out of it for some reason. It's just despicable. I'm just so disgusted. Like, America is one of those places that pretends like it's so diverse. We love our immigrants. We love all these backgrounds. And yeah, it's one of our best qualities, man. There's so many different fucking people like from all around the world here. I used to live in Chicago for like a year and a half. It's, you know, one of my favorite cities, if not my favorite city. There's just like so much, like, I don't know, like this is, you know, there's been people from all around the world that came here, you know, and like try to come here and like that's one of the better qualities we have, you know, even if it is an empire doing it. And like Americans, like when you're here, I mean, there's racist pieces of shit for sure, and there's a lot of them. But like the most Americans are just chill and like want to hang out and be around everybody else, you know, and just like tapping into this anti-immigrant sentiment. I mean, it's unsustainable, obviously, because there's so many reasons. Sending immigrants back. I mean, they're gonna use taxpayer dollars to save taxpayer dollars. Wait, they're gonna use taxpayer dollars for the deportation campaign, which will get immigrants out. But it's supposed to increase their wages. Why? Like they'll decrease the wages even more because there's only a finite amount of people who can work, and they're gonna work no matter what. So then they can just decrease them more. And Milton Friedman explains this in his video. If you look it up, it's why he's like so smug and happy about illegal immigration. Is because this two-tier labor system is economically profitable for the labor aristocratic class, not the immigrant class. The immigrants will always be like this exploited labor force. But you know, we very much, you know, like not illegal Americans or whatever the fuck that even, like, that's not immigrants. People who are born here don't have that same type of you know, deficiency or lack of a privilege, right? Because of the structural issues that this country and the planet have. Yeah, just disgusting. This is all just disgusting, man. I can't believe this. This is just rotten. This is not what we are supposed. You know, it's what we are about, but it's not what I want to be about. It's not what I want this country to be about. It's not what the average American wants this country to be about. But it is what we are about, and it's time for real change. Let's continue.
Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families, used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember, when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Yeah, again, I mean, she didn't say it, but she literally did it. Like, if you're like any degree of intelligent or literate or like have thoughts and like you aren't like a blob or quadriplegics do have thoughts. Like, they're not, if you're not conservative, you would see that she did do that, man. She's literally going to fund the border wall. It's on her bill, bro. Like, this is, like, they really, like, Republican politicians are like, yeah, my voters just, like, won't fact check anything I say anyway, so I can just say whatever the hell I want. And I guess that's unironically actually what's happening. God, he's so gross. He's so slimy. He's such a freaking rat. Just this country is so screwed, and most people have no idea. Like, there are the deterioration that we are dealing with is not going to be handled in a way where we will come out happier and stronger. Things are going to get worse, and I don't think people understand what that means, man. Yeah, he's just saying nonsense, saying lies. Like, this is just gross. And I don't know what the deal is with like all these technical issues, but you see what I'm saying, man? Like, is that the mic thing they had? Were like, or because like no, they both were having like mic issues earlier, and now it's like not. That's what, dude. This is what I'm saying. Like, this kind of stuff in the past wasn't a problem. I mean, maybe they're doing the mic control thing, but it didn't seem like that. I don't know what the hell is going on.
All of us.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of those specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other things, regarding children?
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history, 30% decrease.
It was a decrease, but it's still on the rise overall. And the decrease was largely done not because we had successful de-addiction campaigns, but because Narcan is way, way, way more prevalent on the street now, and people's lives have been saved more. That's the, that. Okay, let's just, I can't. Yeah, it's because of Narcan. It's because of a Band-Aid solution to the problem, They just made, like, heroin EpiPens, It's like, you guys can still do the drugs, just, like, don't die, You have to be you have to be slightly functioning members of our society. You have to be slaves, You can be addicted, but you just still have to be a slave. So, more disingenuous stuff. And again, Tim Walz is going to come from an honest standpoint, He's thinking like, that's genuinely good, and just, he thinks that he wants to do the right thing. I don't know how much of like these weird, evil political instincts are going to come and affect him in the future, because it fundamentally requires him to do that, especially if they end up in the Oval Office, which they most likely will. But maybe he's coming from an honest place, but this is statistics constantly being misused, and a decrease, man. Like, things in America are not getting better. This is an exception that makes the rule type situation. And a lot of these like conditions that we think are like stabilizing are actually just COVID, kind of like picking up its pieces, and like trying to build itself back up, to get America picking up its pieces, trying to build itself up back again after stuff like that threatens it. And so that's when you see small good things like that, even though, again, we're seeing the height of addiction rates, the height of suicide rates, like that, this is copium, man, like straight up, it's lies to put it in this way. But Tim Walz is, at least for right now, appearing to be like a very like honest person, and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, let's continue.
In Ohio, but there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of the largest state and a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this, and that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents, detection for drugs, DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him to, what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator,
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it's like a rare moment of awareness, because Tim Walz is literally like, dude, we want to pass these things, but you don't. And Trump just wants a campaign issue, which is absolutely true. Again, all great stuff to use like true things in a truthful manner, and just, it's clean, even if it's still for liberals to win the election. It's still valid attack points, just objectively. Wow. Yeah. I mean, he literally, like, J.D. Vance is like, you guys aren't doing the border wall bill. And then, like, Tim Walz is like, here are all the reasons that Democrats are actually Republicans, And then Donald Trump didn't do anything. Like, they, you know, this is insane. Border Patrol stopping immigrants, like this is as manufactured narrative as it gets, and they blame the opioid crisis and the fentanyl addiction and stuff like that on these people. But man, like they just want to build up the security state, you know, they just want to build up the military apparatus, you know, and they need a justification for that, which is immigrants, and then they can attack Trump for not doing anything about it and for being incompetent. You know, he's being a piece of shit American, but he has to do it the right way. You know, you have to play by the rules to be a dumpster human being. You can't be insane. You have to be like principled terrible, right? You can't be an unhinged person who commits a genocide. You have to be a classy person who commits a genocide, right? Because again, like all of this is happening while like Palestinians are dying and Lebanon's getting bombed and Iran is getting bombed, and Iran's is like a World War III is breaking out in West Asia, and it's like, yeah, dude, border control. Like I don't know how much. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how much this will be sustainable, because these types, like this rhetoric and this nonsense, is not going to hold up. Especially noting that the economy is not going to stabilize in a way where it gets long-term better. There might be short-term instances where things slightly improve briefly, but the economy is not built on sustainability for so many reasons. And you can see that because like American society crashes every 20 years or whatever, for whatever, you know, types of bubbles and markets there are, which are manufacturers so that the rich can make more and more money, even if it is artificial spending, right? Whether it's on credit or housing markets or whatever the hell it is. Man, it's so bizarre to see like the Democrats have become so like state controlled and Republican. They're like state Republicans now. It's a version. It's like authoritarian center right, you know, and it's weird. It's like, yeah, we want to kick out the immigrants, but it's just to protect people, you know? It's just to help make things better, you know? It'll just make things better off in general. And no, you know? There are, oh my God. Our perception of, like, what's happening historically and materially is so tunnel visioned. We're not seeing how like all of these things are connected to each other in a very obvious way. If you're just like, if you just take 5 minutes to like learn about these things, and it'll be successfully sold on a platter to Americans and they'll eat it up. It's just sad. This is just so depressing to watch, man. And none of this stuff matters. None of this is what's actually pressing right now, but it's what the media and the government and, you know, Americans will get swept up into thinking about and talking about. So this is what gets covered. I'm so enraged. You know, they're trying. You know, they put in all of this energy and effort into being like, look at this show we're running. Look at all this like, you know, wealth and glamour and energy. And it's a spectacle. It's a shit show. It's a joke, and that couldn't possibly be more true. And it's just disgusting to see it all in full detail all the time. There's a reason I try to avoid this all the time, and I don't go into mainstream media like, oh boy, I can't wait to read all this and watch all this nonsense. Like, these are cucks, man. It's an entire industry of cuckoldry, and that's what the vast majority of media, mainstream media, is. There's all kinds of like American journalists who are getting paid like $70,000 a year, and they're like living in a city and they're like barely getting by. Like those people are not the problem. That's not what I'm talking about. Like, you know, journalists and stuff. Like, I'm talking about the talking heads, the media heads, the giants, the tech giants, the billion, like the people who have all these fucking resources, doing this. This is so depressing. Oh my God. All right, let's continue.
Question was, will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules, and it is a disgrace, and it has to stop. Look, I think what Tim said just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that.
It's still so weird because it's like not It's like not true. It's not true. Like none of this is so weird. Like why is that his? And then again, drug cartels using children. He's like, yeah, dude, nothing. I mean, dude, even if they did use it, it's like we're using taxpayer dollars to kill Palestinian children. Like, why is this? Excuse me. Why is this like a real issue? Like, how are? It's just okay. It's like bad when like American kids do it, but like as long as like if Palestinian kids die, that's fine. But if American children are drug muled, like that's the end of the world. I mean, it's bad for sure. Like they're both bad, but one is objectively worse, and it's not America. It's not the American situation. It's genocide, and we're all paying for it. Our taxpayer dollars are paying for a genocide and dying children, and a culture being erased. All just so JD Vance can say nonsense and Tim Walz can be, a person. He might just be like a classic case of a person who wanted to be a good person and wanted to get in politics for the right reasons. But I believe personally that he'll fall in line and do what he's told. Because, it seems like both of these individuals don't really have like that type of mindfulness or that that awareness that foreign policy decisions requires of an American leader. And so much of that is because of our isolationist policies in America. Our politicians are horribly illiterate on other nations' issues and what they do and what they're like. And that's why the liberals are able to convey that, like China, like Kamala Harris was saying that Russia was coming to invade Poland in the last debate. And like, we're constantly talking about how China is like, no, all these countries just want to do their own thing. It's America causing the problems. But they can all just like constantly say BS because they'll fall in line and do what they're told. And, yeah, JD Vance just spewing nonsense, man, nonstop. None of this is true. And Kamala Harris extended, like the Biden administration and Kamala Harris, like they extended. I'm gonna say the Biden administration extended the kids in cages stuff. They literally expanded under Biden, so JD Vance should be happy about this, but they're not gonna talk about that because it's bad, and it's too complex for American discourse, so it's not gonna come up. And another thing that really isn't being addressed is that Kamala Harris was vice president and Donald Trump was president. Like, Kamala Harris can do stuff, but at the end of the day, Joe Biden is going to be a cuckold who does whatever the fuck he wants. In the same way that, like imagine if people were like, why didn't Mike Pence stop Donald Trump? Right? It's like, what was he supposed... I mean, Mike Pence is a piece of shit for sure, but what is he supposed to... Donald Trump like sicked his own followers onto him during January 6th. Like, this is like she's not, like the attacks that the Republicans are trying to make against her are not even like, but people just like say it and eat it up. She has like soft power when she's in that position, but at the end of the day, she's the fucking vice president. The vice president is the side hoe. She's not your main girl. She's the side hoe. She's the side piece. The president is your partner, right? And so they're it's just not going to be, this is all dog shit, nonsense garbage, okay? That's what it is. All of this, everything you're watching and seeing, everything that's happening, none of it's for you. None of it's to make your life better. All of it is for people in power to preserve the way things are, for JD Vance to get a foot up, for Tim Walz to think he's doing the right thing, but he's not actually. Excuse me. And it's all nonsense. We don't have to accept this at all, ever.
We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president again.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look,
Boom. There it is. You see what I'm saying? Over 50% of Americans support over 50% of Americans support massive mass deportations. Like, that wasn't directly from mainstream media talking about the border, constantly talking about immigrants and these like small instances of like this one brown person in this one area committed a murder. Like, there aren't like white Americans doing 10 times worse things every day, and they can blame it on like, that's like, they should be saying like, wow, Americans are really fucking racist, right? Like, what the hell happened? And they should be addressing themselves. Instead, in traditional reactionary fashion, because this is what no theory does to a motherfucker, like, they're just like, yeah, dude, so 51% or 50 plus percent of Americans want mass deportation. Like, that's indefensible. Like, you want to deport children because, again, these are fascist reactionary sentiments because economic conditions in the United States are worsening to the point where people are like, well, I don't want immigrants taking my jobs because, I mean, like, as a worker, that's an understandable thing to think, but it's incorrect and it's still racist because they're not the reason that's occurring. And so they're going to be the victims of this campaign, which taxpayer dollars will pay for, and they'll increase our taxes for it, and they won't do more things to help us out, and they'll kick out children and families, and they'll do God knows what else. God knows what the hell they'll do to these people. Holy shit. That alone should tell you the state of things, man. Over 50% of Americans support mass deportations. Like, we should deport those Americans. Like, I assume, right? Like, that's who they're talking about themselves. Oh, they're not okay with it. Oh, they're not okay with, like, so if they're against it if it happens to them, but as long as it happens to other people, it's okay. Oh, they weren't born here. Neither were you, motherfucker. You're white. Shut the fuck up. Get out of here. Like, your ancestors showed up. Like, shut up. You're wrong. Shut up. And they're saying stupid nonsense again. And all of this is because Americans are very, very, very stupid. And we don't have understanding or intelligence or education or nuance. And so there's all of these dumbass things happening right now where over 50% of Americans want to deport children. Holy shit. Holy shit, that's insane. That is insane. That is insane. That is insane. That is insane. And it is all because of mainstream media. And it started with Fox News. And then once, like, you know, because nobody watches mainstream media anymore. And the only people who do are older people, like in Gen X and baby boomers, right? But that demographic is watching, for the most part, Fox News anyways. So MSNBC, fucking ABS or ABC or whatever that. God, CNN, like all of these places, these like, you know, who they get called like liberal leaning or like more center, which again is all nonsense and all lies. But they're still talking about the same narratives, the same things. They're still, you know, because it's not real journalism. It's talking about what people are talking about and then putting it on the news, not talking about what people should be talking about. That would be journalism. Yeah, what a joke. Well, this country is a joke. Over 50% of our population supports deportations. That is in-fucking-sane. That is insane. Wow.